All right, folks, we're going to do the Chapter 3 test review. The Chapter 3 test review will be after fall break, as you know, as you're probably watching it after fall break. So here we go. Week of October the 19th, 2020. Okay, the first we're going to do is we're going to talk about the relationship between each of the angles. So one thing we're also going to talk about is when you're trying to prove lines parallel and why they are parallel. So let's look at the following. Okay, angle 2 and angle 4. I want you to look at those, and you will see that those are vertical angles. And because they're vertical angles, they do share a transversal, but they also share another line. So you cannot prove lines parallel. Cannot prove lines parallel. All right, and I'm highlighting that in yellow because that is something totally different. So, okay, there we go. All right, now let's look at 5 and 15. If you look at 5 and 15, they both are touched by line B. They're both touched by line B, so they both touch line B. And if you look, these are alternate exterior angles. So the question is, which lines are parallel? Since they touch line B, then that means that L is parallel to M by the converse of alternate exterior angles. Now, something to keep in mind. When you're trying to prove lines parallel, you always have to use the converse. Yes, they are alternate exterior angles, but to prove lines parallel, you have to use the converse, and you will be counted off if you don't do that. All right, 12 and 16. 12 and 16, if you look, they both touch line M. Since they both touch line M, then that means that L and M are not parallel to it. We can't prove those lines parallel, but we can prove that A is parallel to B. If you look, these are corresponding angles. So A is parallel to B, and that is by the converse of corresponding angles. All right. Now, I'm going to circle 8 and 13. 8 and 13, as you can tell, are same side interior angles. They both touch line B. So therefore, because they're supplementary, we can prove that L is parallel to M by the converse of same side interior angles. Okay, now, we got a couple more here, 11 and 10. Those are just supplementary angles. And because of that, no lines parallel. Okay, because of that, no lines are parallel. All right, but we can look at 10 and 16. 10 and 16, sorry about that, it slipped. They both touch M. They touch M. And then, and I'm going to say line M. Since they both touch line M and they are alternate interior angles, that means that A is parallel to B by the converse of alternate interior angles. So you got to ask 3 questions. First of all, what line do they touch? They both touch. In this case, they both touch M. That means that L and M are not the ones that are parallel. A and B are the ones that are parallel, and the relationship between the 2 angles is that they're alternate interior angles. So once you determine that they're alternate interior angles, then that means that you can prove the lines parallel by the converse of alternate interior angles. All right. Now, that's that. We'll talk about this more when we come back into class. All right. Now, triangles. We spent a lot of time on triangles in section 3.5. So I want you to look at the following. We'll do each one of these individually. Let's go ahead and start with Z. It doesn't matter which angle. In some cases it does, but in this case it doesn't. Here's what you know. You know that Z and this angle are supplementary. So I'm going to write supplementary Z plus 90. Now remember, when you see a square in the corner like that, that means it's a right angle. If it's a right angle, it's 90 degrees. So these are equal to 180. So you subtract 90. So Z equals 90 degrees. All right. Now, let's look at X. Here's what we know about X. We know that X plus 38 plus 90 equals 180 degrees because we're looking at this triangle right here. I'm looking at that triangle right there. So when I add them together, I get X plus 128 equals 180 degrees. And then I subtract 128. X equals 52. All right, now, and the same thing goes for this last one here. I'll do that one in red. Okay, so Y plus Z plus 65 equals 180. Well, we know what Z is, so Y plus 90 plus 65 equals 180, which means that Y plus 155 equals 180. So that means that Y equals 25 degrees. And then X equals 52. All right. Now, excuse me. We're going to go on to the next one. Trying to get this done so that way the video is not taking too much of your time. Okay, now, here's what you need to know. Let's look at X. $30 is an example of an exterior angle. X plus 63 is an example of remote interior angles. And then X equals 67. So X has a value of 67. All right. So these two right here are a perfect example of remote interior angles. Now, Y is vertical, equals 63 because they're vertical. And then once we have that, then Z plus 85 plus 63 equals 180 degrees, which is Z plus 148 equals 180. So Z equals 32 degrees. All right, so this is an example right here of the sum of the interior triangles. The sum of the interior angles of a triangle is always going to be 180. But the red one right here, I have the two remote interior angles because they're the angles that don't touch this angle. So these two added together will add up to give you 130. So 63 plus 67 is the missing angle. All right, now, this next one's going to take a little bit. We're going to split it up into two parts, okay? So here's what we know. I'm going to split it up right here because if you look, these two are the parallel lines. So we're going to divide it up into one part of the problem and then we'll do the other part afterwards. Okay, so I'm given that angle 3 has a measure of 110 degrees and I'm given that angle 8 has a measure of 75 degrees. All right, now I'll talk about this as I go through it so you can kind of get the idea and see how it works. All right, well, first of all, let's look at the obvious. 75 and 2. Those are vertical, so that means this also has to be 75. 8 and 10. they're alternate interior angles. So that means this has to be 75 as well. Well, 8 and 16 also happen to be they're corresponding angles. So therefore, they are going to be congruent. So those four angles there are congruent. Now, for the next one, we can find any of the other angles right here by doing the following. We know that 1 and 8 are supplementary. So this is the supplement of 75, which is 180 minus 75, which is 105. Now, 1 and 7 are vertical. Since they're vertical, that means they're going to be the same. 105 and 9, they're corresponding. Therefore, they're the same. And then 15 and 1 are alternate exterior angles. So they're the same. You may have to play this part over a couple times just to kind of get the idea of what I'm saying. And we'll do one, and we'll do one in class, and I'll try to do another example of this just so you can kind of see. But you get the idea. Hopefully, you get the idea of how this works. All right. Now let's look at the next one. Over here, this is totally different. I got 110. 5 and 110 are the vertical, so they're the same. So 110. 3 and 11, they're the same because they're corresponding. So 110. And then 3 and 13 are the same because they're alternate exterior angles. So I got those four that are the same. Now 4 and 110 are supplementary. So this is the supplement of, so that's going to be 180 minus 110, which is 70 degrees. Well, 4 and 6 are vertical, so they're going to be 70 degrees. 4 and 12 are corresponding, so therefore they are 70 degrees. And then 14 and 4 are also going to be congruent because they are alternate exterior angles. You may have to play this part a couple times just so you can see it. I would do the same. And I'm sorry if I'm going a little fast, but I want to make sure that I got everything in before that. Okay, I'm going to pause this and we'll continue on with part 2 in just a moment.